Okay, thank you again, Toby and Jason, for your time. And I was watching the videos that Jeremy kindly shared, and was learning the basics of the Bersih Indonesia project. It's quite impressive. So I'm very excited to learn more about the project from both of you. And I'm going through the project, the questions from the start of the Bersih Indonesia to about Bersih Indonesia project, and how you might want to engage Japanese companies, or what are the advice that you might have for the Japanese companies. And then finally, I will also ask you about the future plans for the Bersih Indonesia. Now, the questions that we initially shared with you, as I said, we combined because of the nature of the team. I will probably ask the first question to Toby and the next question to Jason, and then if the person that I didn't ask first has anything to add, please feel free to add. So the first question to Toby is that can you introduce what Bersih Indonesia is, and when did it start its operations?
So the Bersih Indonesia program is a full end-to-end waste system that involves collection of waste, of household and also some business waste, collection and then sorting at specially built, we call them MRFs, material recovery facilities. We're building 5 of those. And then we'll separate out the valuables from the valuables and the recyclates from the waste stream, and then that will go on to the waste will then be traded from the back of the organisation. So it's an absolute full end-to-end waste system, much like you would see in any developed country in the world.
Great. And so it already started, right? Recently.
So the program, we've been developing it for more than 2 years. So it's we initially built a design of the project the way we wanted to deliver it, but we have a more formal design underway now. It started a couple of weeks ago. We have signed some MOUs and are completing MOUs and legally binding documents with the governments as we speak. But the project is 100% underway. Yeah, where the design of the project's happening now. We're already engaging with the community and the community leaders. Yeah, we're well underway.
Right, great. Jason, anything to add to this question?
I mean, so when you're doing a program like this, there's this really interesting moment where you go from the planning and design, and you flip a switch and it's on. You're in the game. And we're right now right at that phase. So all the background work, all the baselines are done. The initial government relations are done. Our government partners are in and fantastic. So we're buttoning up the last pieces there, and we're gearing up to put concrete on the ground and put wheels on the ground, and behavior change pieces are already being put into place. So it's just it's a really exciting time in the project because all that theoretical work is over, and now the real tons start coming in. So that's where we are. And I guess the last thing I would say is it's just a fantastic team. In the end, you want people with political expertise. You want people with design and systems expertise. Your government partners are by far the most powerful players in the game, and from national to local. Honestly, we have the most engaged partners we could possibly want. So we're really, I guess you'd say, sitting on G, waiting on O, and getting into it. So
great.
So I'll just one more, I suppose, one more thing from my side. It's people tend to think of a project as underway when you've broken ground and you're digging something, or you're pouring concrete or laying bricks. The program's been underway for some time, but we're expecting to start breaking ground and pouring concrete in the second quarter of this year. So we'll actually see some tangible assets around very soon. So it's moving very quickly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that additional information. So I understand that our organization is also based in Bali, and we heard a lot about Project Stop that I believe was implemented, and then that kind of the lessons were feeding into the design of Bersih Indonesia. So what kind of transition did you make from Project Stop, and what are the lessons that were incorporated into the design of the Bersih Indonesia? Maybe for Jason first.
Yeah, I'll give it a start. So I guess first up, and I think this is important. So Project Stop, building waste systems at a scale about 1/10 the scale of this Bersih Indonesia program, provided an immense number of key learnings for sort of how to do this, what to do, what not to do. And I think it's one of the reasons that AAPW so strongly supported it, to create a part of a foundation for Bersih. But in the end, Bersih is way beyond the boundaries of Project Stop. It really pulls from best practices around the world. It's got a incredibly impressive team of experts, and it just takes everything to a whole new level. And so that said, we've looked heavily at Project Stop. Toby and I talk about and even visit Project Stop sites with some frequency to make sure that we're grabbing every bit of goodness we can. So a few key ones, just to mention them. One, and I've alluded to it already, but government buy-in and engagement at all levels is absolutely key. Having great partnerships is key. In the end, it's their country, it's their program, and they need to be able to run it long term. So making sure that you're well engaged and that they're able to join you on the journey and lead, for the most part, the whole program is important. So we've definitely cemented that and cemented sort of how to do that. KPI driven performance, really, really important. So when we're looking at these programs, they have to be economically viable. Customer service and safety both have to be key. And a very uniform way to do that is really good worker KPIs, really good program KPIs. How many houses can a tricycle collect in a day? How many kilograms of flexible plastic film can a sorter on a sort line sort in a day? That kind of a thing. Defining what's possible, and then how do you apply it best? A few more. The economics really have to be sound. How do you set the right household fee or service fee? How do you estimate, how the recycling markets can play in? How do you estimate how sort of government engagement can play into that piece, and anticipate things that are hard to anticipate around repair and replacement costs and that sort of a thing? That your modeling on that really has to be tight, to make sure that you're hitting the right mark financially and operationally. A couple of others, a small team can leverage a lot of good, and so you don't need to staff the whole thing. You just need to staff enough people to build capacity and empower the right folks. And then lastly, you really have to design for your exit from the very beginning, from day one. So if you go in and you're not thinking about how do I make sure that this program is going to stand on its own 2 feet without me, from the first stroke of the pen, you've already lost probably. So when we get into Bersih Indonesia, we really think about government capacity building, helping them think through every policy they need, every governance structure they need, every staff person they might need to justify in their budgets, that kind of a thing. Every bit of infrastructure they need and how to maintain it. So we picked up those lessons and hundreds more from Project Stop and thousands more from experiences across the globe. And it's given a great foundation. And I guess the last thing I would say is what I'm really excited about is the lessons we're going to learn when we have the same conversation, say in a couple of years, on how we would do the next one. Because I think no matter how well we arm ourselves, we'll learn more things. It will be iterative. And I think Indonesia would be keen to pick up on those learnings and continue running. So that's what I'd say.
Great, thank you. Toby, anything to add?
Probably a couple of things. Project Stop is a fantastic program, no doubt about it. But its lack of scale provided learnings both positive and negative about how to grow it. And we talk about Project Stop quite a lot. It's like the little brother that we're learning from, and then we move forward. But Jason's right. We have the learnings from Stop are finite. We're getting learnings from everywhere now. From experience around the world. Jason and I are highly experienced in the waste industry, and we bring experience from other projects, both onshore and offshore, remote and urban. So we've built off those learnings. I mean, the key thing for me from the Project Stop has showed us is actually a negative thing from Project Stop, which I don't like talking about because it's a negative. But it's what happens when governments change, and when governments change, the lack of support that you get is you just don't know what's going to happen. Is the next government going to pick up where the last one left off? And I think from that, we need to then foolproof it. How do you isolate the project from political change? And I think we're doing that. And one of the things we need to do is make a system mandatory, because Project Stop is it's aspirational without a doubt, but it's quite high touch because we have a system that isn't yet it's not yet compulsory for the community to follow. So you have to constantly be providing your community with positive affirmation about the project, which is easy. I mean, it's a fantastic project, but it's high touch, and it makes that walking away very difficult, because if you walk away, what happens afterwards? So we've made a lot of those changes. Brought from that knowledge, we've brought changes into this new project. So I love Project Stop, but it's plenty of learnings from it without a doubt.
Okay, thank you, fantastic. Okay, so the next question is about the key components of Bersih Indonesia, which Toby already you mentioned. This is an end-to-end from collection, sorting to recycling. But can you recap what are the main components of the project? Sure.
There's you can ask me on most days, and I'll tell you that 20%, and I'm not going to get a small amount of my project or the project is about the technical solution. The technical solution is relatively simple. We are providing bins to the community. We're picking those bins up. We're taking those bins to a facility that we've built. We're sorting through the waste, and then we're valorizing the waste. It's what happens everywhere. The major part of the program is the other stuff, the intangibles. It's the government engagement, the community engagement, the fighting of battling against tradition. That's not how we've done it. We've always done it this way. Why should we do your new thing? Why should we pay for a system that we've never paid for before? We don't pay for waste. We just dump it over here and we dispose of it another way. These are the things that are actually time consuming. And we've broken this program down, I think, into, 4 main pillars. One is technical. Jason and I are all over the technical stuff. The second one, I think, is community and government engagement. The third one is, what were we calling it? The third one is comms and how to talk about the program and the like. And the fourth one is then the rest, which is things that pop up that you never expected, and they happen all the time. We have the most planned out system along the way. We're going to do this and this. We're going to follow this Gantt chart. It's going to be so easy. Nothing is easy when you're rolling out a new system in a country that's not had one before. Indonesia is very welcoming, and they're fantastic political partners because they're keen and they've made these huge aspirational targets. But they also have a very, very convoluted system. So you've got to work with that system, and I'm sure you know that living here. It's convoluted. So working around those, such a simple system. It's a waste collection system. They're easy. They cost money. They're not normally profitable. They're just your rates and your taxes pay for them normally. So how do you implement one in a country that's never had one before? And I think these are the things that we're finding more challenging than the technical side. The technical side we're happy with. These are the challenging parts.
Right. Great. Jason, anything to add?
Honestly, couldn't have said anything better. I'll always underline that this sort of government partnership and related capacity building to make sure that they're just really ready to grab this thing and run with it as we exit stage left in the next few years is foundational and critical. But yeah, Toby covered all the key pieces, and it really is a pretty simple system. It's just a matter of how do we set it up in a locally appropriate way.
Right. So then the next question is on the technical side, which I understand is much easier one. And so, Jason, you mentioned the KPIs and you basically really having a clear expectation. But the data collection is a different thing, right? You set the data that you now need to collect data to see whether these KPIs are met. So what are the processes that you have or you are putting in place in terms of, this more data-driven approach that you are trying to establish within the project?
This is the fun stuff for me. So it actually started right at the very beginning. Like, well, kind of what you jump into first to really understand what's happening. Really, what are the nuts and bolts? You have to go in and do a waste characterization. What exactly are people throwing away? What's it made of? How much of it is there? Where's it coming from? Where's it going right now? Right. You need to look at what policies are in place now. How is this being handled just sort of by the government politically? What do people think about it? Social mapping, critical. Then what infrastructure is out there? What recycling markets? What collection? What disposal infrastructure? What composting infrastructure like that? And then as you get into it, you kind of jump into things like, okay, if we were going to do this with this kind of collection vehicle, how might we route them and how many will we need? So you need to do route mapping. And the list just goes on and on, the financial modeling, that kind of a thing. So this is all the baseline stuff that just we've done and has informed the rest of our approach. As we again turn that corner into implementation, then it really becomes, well, how do you track the behavior change campaigns? They're very personal when it gets down to it. I mean, actually sitting on kind of with each family and talking to them about the program and teaching them about the program and how to participate and why it's important. So how do you track those engagements that they've occurred, how they've gone, how you can make them better? So setting up systems for that. As you set up collection, how do you actually track how many households did every driver manage to visit, track those critical KPIs of sortation and see how that affects markets, that kind of a thing as well. And likewise, how do you really encapsulate which local governments are ready to jump in with the program and which might need some some assistance, right? So it's that kind of data tracking that we're looking at, and I guess above all of it is, how do you sort of track your approach to safety? How do you kind of track how things are going with safety and how you can always be better? So that's, as we turn the corner, those are the new KPIs we're looking at. We'll still use the kind of the old ones to inform what we're doing. It's iterative along the way, and so that's the data piece. Great.
Toby, anything to add?
Just one thing. I mean, again, this is Jason's sweet spot. This is what Jason does. He's a technical guy and loves waste systems. I think it's important to recognize that we've built this system off assumptions. They are qualified assumptions, and they're better than guesses. But we've made it off assumptions, and I don't think any of us would be happy with a system that was always based off assumptions. So it's important that as we roll forward and we can change those assumptions to knowledge, that we adapt the program as such. We have a standardized how much waste every household produces in Mulund. Now, as well as I know, whatever city you live in, there's more affluent areas, there's areas that are more compact, so probably don't have as much green waste. There's areas and we have a rough idea of that, but until we actually start going to people's houses and picking up rubbish and understanding what that rubbish is, we're not going to know about it. But it's going to help us. That knowledge we need to then trap, and then we're going to use that knowledge again as we move forward into the next program, because we have a scaled system now. So we're just saying the whole Regency is X, But if we then can figure out that this is Regency plus X plus 1 plus 2 minus 1 minus 2, and we have a better idea, when we go into the next Regency, we can use that more detailed data to more accurately predict what we're going to see. Jason and I mean, and this is something that you know, we haven't had arguments at all, but we've discussed intently along the way, is something as simple as how many houses can a trike visit in a day to pick up rubbish. Now, if you're off by 5 seconds on a scale of this big, it makes a difference of more than 200 vehicles. So you have to really, you know, it is complex. We're talking, you know, just so you recognize how so we've had to be a bit conservative, but then when it comes, Jason will tell you I'm not conservative at all. I love being right on the edge. You know, let's get efficiency. So these sorts of things I think are absolute key, and we're going to learn more and more as we go. You know, at the moment, are we going to be 1,400 vehicles? Are we going to be 1,000 vehicles? We don't know. And I think that's the important part. You know, we know we're going to be in that parameter. We're going to be 11 to 1,300, I would suggest. But until we start rolling it out, we're not going to know.
Yeah, and how old these trucks are, right? With the puncture.
Well, they're all going to be new. We're buying new ones.
All new. Oh, okay.
Everything's new.
Great.
We're going to utilize. Okay. We will utilize some of the existing infrastructure, but all of the ones that we're spending $20 million on capex. So a lot of that's in vehicles.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say a number. We're not spending exactly 20 million in capex. It's around 20 million, and around half of that's on vehicles. And
right.
So it's it's interesting. It's impressive.
I mean, that's a justifiable investment. That's, you know, you need that to work, right?
Exactly.
Great, thank you so much. And the next question is about the location, right? So Project Stop was in Bali, western part of Bali, and then Malang. And I'm guessing like many stars need to be aligned to kind of make a decision to go ahead with this location. So I wonder, what are the things that you will look at, and then why Malang?
That's a super question. So and one that played a huge part of our feasibility study. And first of all, I'll touch on the fact that Project Stop actually has they have one operating plant in Bali, which is in Jembrana, but they also have 2 operating plants in Java. Project Stop didn't really play a role in where we went, just the knowledge from those regions. But what we basically did was we came up with 10 criteria we were looking for 10 or 11 criteria we were looking for from a regency. The most important was the willingness of the government to participate in something like this. Now, this is aspirational, new. We have to charge their community. They've never been charged before, so it's also going to be hard. You know, it's not just going to be an easy rollout. There's stuff that needs to be done. So, you know, we shortlisted. I think we started around 10 or 11 regencies throughout. Java, we based around Java because Java is very high leakage, and it has a very, very good end recycling market. So it was a good start to be based there. Then it was a matter of who's keen, who has the infrastructure in place already, who's prepared, because we're making them change their governance model. We're saying from now on, you're not going to have village-based waste systems. We're going to raise that up, and we're going to have regency-based waste systems. So we're basically creating public utilities. They've never had that. So they need to be prepared to do that. Then they needed to have available land. How good are your landfills? You know, are your landfills lined? Have they got methane extraction? Are they monitored well? Have they got room to expand? And so we went from 10 or 11 to sort of 3 in the end, where the 3 we chose. There's probably another couple of regencies that are close to being able to do that. And I think once we prove the model, there will be a lot more communities that are excited about it and will do the work that they need to do to get themselves to the level that we can then deliver a program. But Malang is without doubt I suppose the pinnacle of waste collection and waste systems in Indonesia, definitely in Java, but in Indonesia, they have a fantastically excited government. They have a guy that runs the waste system there he's been 30 years in the program, and he gets it. He just understands it, and he's basically pulled together this system that is almost there, off the smell of an oily rag. He's had no funding. He's been able to pull this from there and this from there. Is amazing. So working with him is incredible. So you have this guy that sees the bigger idea. He understands what needs to happen. So he's very supportive. So when you've got someone like that, it helps a lot. So Malang was the first choice easily. Then we have Magelang and Sukabumi as the second and third. And we probably would have done them the other way around, except Pak Luhut, who is instrumental in the government and is driving the waste change in Indonesia. He has a soft spot for Magelang and believes that this should be a tourist center for the country. And it's this beautiful temple there that is the largest in the world, and come and see it. And we need to improve this. So there's a point where you go, here's where we've chosen the sites, and here's the ones the government want, and let's find the happy medium in between. Malang was definitely the first choice though for everyone.
Great. Jason, anything to add?
Not on that one.
Sorry, man.
No. There's nothing else to be said. I'm glad you brought up Pak Renun, because he's the wise sage man who's really lit a fire under all of this. He's the recognized expert in sort of proliferating waste management in Indonesia from a government perspective. So Toby just talked a lot about the guy, and he's again, the local partnerships are critical, and he's just gangbusters.
Yeah. We also in conducting our project, the local champion is really critical. So I kind of understand the importance of that. On this next question, both of you, Toby and Jason, I think you mentioned this the fee issues, or not an issue, that's a kind of introduction of fee to, I guess, make this everything more financially sustainable. Can you share a little bit more about this and how you are introducing that, how you are engaging the communities, what has been the initial response, etc.?
Up to you, Tove. I'm happy to jump in. I'm happy to play second fiddle. It's your choice.
This is probably one I'll start with, I reckon, Jace. But it's sure. You said the fee issue, and there is no doubt it is a fee issue. So let's be clear on it. It is when you are charging a whole community. Remember, this is 2.6 million people, and you're charging them for something that most of them have never had before. So I think when we look at the numbers, it's somewhere between 15 and 30% of the community have had some form of waste collection of some kind of standard. I think if you wanted to go to a real standard, there's very few in the community that have had a high standard of waste collection, and as such, they've if they have had a service, they've been paying. I'm not going to say peanuts. They haven't been paying very much for it though, and so then you come along and say, hey, we're going to do a waste system. How good's this? And we're going to charge you X amount for it. We're going to charge you the number. We can tell you the number is 25,000 rupiah. We're going to charge you 25,000 rupiah a month, which is not a lot of money. But when they've been paying 10,000 or 5,000, it's a hell of a lot of money. It's a huge increase on what they've been paying. And what's different about it? Previously people have picked up my waste and it's gone. But now you want to pick up my waste and charge me 4 or 5 times what I was, or twice as much, or whatever the number is, more now. What's different? And the difference is clear. We're providing a waste system that actually takes the waste to a final destination where it's no longer entering the environment. And you know, there's these horror stories, and I could show you 1,000 photos of what happens with waste systems in this region now. People are paying for stuff. The collector takes out the valuables from it and then just dumps the rest in some area, a park. It's no different than you know, the people taking it themselves to a park. So we're changing that. We're formalizing it. You know, the DLH, the Environment Department, they do a fantastic job already. But they've only got limited resources. So we need to charge people for a service to raise it up. And I just keep saying to the community, you know, this is world leading stuff. You know, we're now taking, you know, Indonesia world leading. So it's a system we're being able to do. I'll give you a rough number. Around the world, you spend somewhere between 2 and 2.5% of your household revenue, your household income every year on waste collection. And we're delivering this for about 1%. So half the price of anywhere else in the world. And the system is good. And that's, you know, obviously scaled for the different socioeconomics, but 1% of your household revenue is very, very inexpensive for a system this good. But how do you explain that to people when they just, you know, we're starting the waste journey in Indonesia. It's not mature. We're just starting it. So we need to work with them, and it's going to be hard. You know, we've got this waste collection system, and the money involved is just going to be very, very difficult, but exciting at the same time.
Interesting. I'm just trying to think about the analogy with the other kind of fees. So when for example, LPG was introduced, people were not using it, and they start to pay. The PDAM started, but PLN, but they have like more direct, immediate benefits.
Yeah. If you don't pay your PLN bill, and for those of you that don't know, PLN is the power company. If you don't pay your bill, your power doesn't go on. You have no lights. You have no fridge. If you don't pay your waste bill, well, I can still do what I've been doing for the last 30 years, and I can walk this bag full of rubbish out to that park. So it's hard, but there is a lot of pride in the community. Let's get this straight. We're not just fighting a one-way battle here. We have a community that recognizes that they don't want waste in their environment. So it's not as dire as I'm saying, but everyone, the vast majority of the population want to come along for the ride. We just need to make sure the numbers right, and we need to make sure that they have an easy and accessible way to pay it. Yeah. And PLN might be the answer.
Like I'm just thinking of the Japanese case or other cases that I'm aware of. It's part of the tax, right? So people are not paying separately for the waste collection, waste management. So we are not actually aware of like what's
no.
in
so
the tax.
Household rates or income tax are usually the ways that it's paid. Household rates is usually one because it's your local council or local district that normally has the waste contract for their community. So it's paid through your local rates. Yeah. There's no such thing as rates, as local rates for these housing, for a lot of these houses. So you can't do that. So we're looking at, we're exploring a lot of options. In fact, we've made this a project of its own, with its own project manager to figure out how to collect this money. And, public utilities, or utilities, if we can get on water bills, or can we get on, water bills or power bills or something. Yeah. Bank apps, all sorts of ways. So I would love to come up with 15 different ways for people to pay and make it easier for them.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
And I mean, I think it's important to look first. Yeah, we can't minimize the challenge of this one. It's probably arguably the toughest nut to crack. And at the same time, if you ask the people in Japan, hey, you know what, we're just going to take away your waste services entirely. You just go figure it out. I mean, we're going to take away the landfills. We're going to take away waste energy plants. We're going to take the recycling plants. You know, how would that go over? I mean, I would wager not particularly well. Once you get hooked into it, it becomes that basic human service that you're expecting, right? One of the many, many great things about Malang, when you walk down the streets, they're clean. I mean, they're super clean. You walk through and think, well, they must be doing something great with the waste because I don't see it. I mean, everything is clean, swept, and perfect. And what that means is there's community pride. And Toby mentioned it as well, but the community is extremely proud, and they're family oriented. They want sort of clean, healthy conditions, and so that's a big piece, right? And so yeah, how do we make it easier for them to pay? How do we help sort of build that culture of this is good for this is going to make everything even better. It's going to make Malong even stronger. It's going to make the family even healthier. And these are some of the things that we think about when we look at this. The government takes it a step beyond. Hey, they're going into an election year. 2024 is an election year, which makes things all the more interesting. And so they say, well, how can first, let's double down. Is this the right number? And it's great. I mean, they're really getting into the deep numbers to be sure it's the right number. And they've definitely concluded with us that it is. And so then it's a matter of, okay, well, how do we structure it? How do we get the message out? And then how do we make it clear to people this is important, and we need to all sort of come in and sort of rise the tide on this thing. And so that's the hard work we're into. That's the deep work we're into right now. What's the behavior change campaign look like? What's the government response and support look like on it to make it live and breathe? Something I'll tell you from other programs, from Project Stop programs. You asked about learnings from Project Stop, and there are again quite a few. And one of them is in villages that are highly invisibly supportive of paying the waste fees. The waste fee collection is more than sufficient for what the program needs. And so, doubling down on those politics, doubling down on working with influencers around, like politicians around this piece in specific, it's foundational, it's critical. And so that's why we're doing it. So,
Right.
So yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you. So like moving to the government part, and I guess, Toby, you mentioned that, well, maybe it was Jason, some of the existing waste collection has been done at some village level, and now you're trying to bring it up not just to the sub-district level, but to the regency level, which I believe started to involve so many more stakeholders. And how has the process been in engaging the government at different levels?
So I can start with a high level conversation, but Jason can dig down into the detail because his team has been well and truly involved in this process. One of the things we wanted to do at the start was remove the complexity, and Indonesia is one of these places in the world where a village-based waste system is proving to be incredibly inefficient. You can go everywhere, you can just drive around and you can see the inefficiency. Some years back, I'm guessing 10 years back or so, the central government made a sort of disperse some funds and said, go ahead and build these things called TPS 3Rs, which are localized waste facilities. And then everyone, all the villagers got a little trike, and they were expected to go and collect their own stuff and manage it there. But it doesn't take you long to drive around and see that most of these a lot of these TPS 3Rs are just sitting idle. Well, there's a couple of blokes in there playing cards during the day, and it's just not, it is not efficient. And the thing about it is, anywhere in the world, the whole idea about a waste system, you need efficiency. If you have 80 different systems running right next to each other, you know that if you could pull them together, you might need 30 of the, you might need 30 of the people instead of the 80, because you'd share across villages, you'd share resources, you'd take A to B, you wouldn't worry about having all these little facilities. And that's what we've done. We've just basically gone, okay, we're going to centralize this. And the Regency needs to be there as the leader, because centralizing a facility means you have to put MRFs and transfer stations in villages, existing villages. And if it was under a village model, it would never have worked previously, because you wouldn't have been able to take the waste from village A into village B, and village B had the facility, it just wouldn't have worked. So we move it up to the Regency and say, here's how it's working. We're going from here now. And all of the funds are going to disperse from here now. And you're going to run it. It's your system. And it's they're excited about it. They're excited about it, and they're nervous as hell as well. So don't get me wrong. It's, we're talking about 3,000 staff in this project. This is a huge undertaking for a community that previously might have had 400 in the waste team. They've now got 3,000, and that sort of thing is just huge for them. They've now got 1,500 vehicles. Why? It's massive. How do we maintain those? How do we operate them? The OPEX, they're scared of the OPEX, which is fair enough. If Jason and I have got our numbers wrong and they end up having to pay heaps of money in OPEX top up, it's a travesty. We're pretty confident that we've got the numbers right, and we know that we can roll the system out in line with requirements. So there's never going to be money spent that doesn't need to be spent. So we're confident, but they're nervous, and we've got to hold their hands and walk them through this process. I'll stop there. You may notice that I talk passionately about personalities and holding hands and walking them through stuff, and Jason just statistics, bang, just
great.
It's the number.
We're a good match, the two of us. And look, honestly, just to sort of tack on at the end there, like, so Toby's right. Look, if you look at waste as an industry, scale is the trick, right? Scale makes it work. If you try and operate a system for only 1,000 households, the economics are tough. Having a well-informed manager that really understands what's going on is tough. Even having enough collection or sortation staff at that scale is it's darn near impossible. And so the structure that we're using applies that theory in good practice. Now, that being said, some villages have good systems. Most of them don't service the entirety of the village, but if you can picture yourself as the head of a village that has a pretty good program servicing a quarter of your village, you might feel a little bit threatened if somebody comes in and says, we're going to take over this whole thing. You're like, but I've been doing this quite well on my own for 10 years. So that's where it gets interesting, right? In some ways, if nobody had anything and we came in and just said, here's this new program and everybody will get it, that's a bit of a cleaner slate, but it's really not sort of paying credence to the people who have come before and are doing a good job. And so a lot of what we do is we look village by village. There are 390 of them. And we look village by village. What's the deal? What's the attitude of waste management? What are they doing right now? Is that something that could integrate with the program? Is it something that should stand apart from the program, or is there no program at all and we can just go ahead and crack on? And so, it's the details that count, right? And so the good thing is the Regency has, a village engagement agency that's geared specifically towards this. So, we work with them daily on how to do this stuff. But in the end, it's sort of that structured flexibility that has to apply across the whole program. It's the daily problem solving of, well, what do we do about this one? Because it doesn't look like the other 389. How do we fit that in a way that's efficient enough to manage, but also gives a nod to sort of the local politics? And so that ends up being, as it turns out, coffee shops and long conversations over late night coffees is the big answer to that, because that's how a lot of problems get solved. So anyways, it's a heck of a good puzzle.
Right. Great. Thank you. And this might be related to some of the things that you have said, but this BLUD Public Service Agency, explain to us what it is and what's so unique about it.
So this is the when you raise from the village level to the Regency level. I'll keep this really simple. It's more complex because there's so many different governance levels within the Indonesian government. But a BLUD model, and I can't tell you what the acronym is in Bahasa, but the BLUD model is basically a public utility. And what it does, it allows, if you look at an Indonesian Regency treasury, normally it's cash in and cash out from whatever revenue source they have. So if they get it from wherever, and they can spend it on whatever. But what we're doing here is ring fencing the waste system and ensuring that the waste system manages its own finances. So by creating a BLUD, the BLUD then manages the waste system. The funds that come in are then spent only on the waste system, which is absolutely critical for the running of a waste system, because there's going to be revenue there that is revenue they've never seen before, but there's also costs that they've never seen before. So it's very important for us to keep it ring fenced. and that's what this Blood does. Blood can have its own bank accounts, which is rare. So it's basically a public utility. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. We're setting up a public utility.
Great. Jason, anything to add on this?
Look, you know, any system, regardless of what government system you set up, they could work in different circumstances. But this Blood model it's sort of like having your cake and eating it too, right? It's just it gives you all the functionality you could hope for within that might be possible within the system. So, you know, to say any government that didn't have a Blood would not have a good waste management system would be false. But to say a Blood seems like the optimized way to manage one of these larger systems, I think would be true. So in the end, you know, the government is quite keen. I mean, really, really excited to go to this Blood model, which suits quite well because I think it'll set the program up to a much greater success. And that said, if for some reason, you know, somebody operating in an Indonesian Regency that never wanted to go to a Blood was listening to this and said, "Oh no, I guess we're going to fail," that would be false. But I think Malang is on the right track, and I think they're gonna. I think other Regencies are going to hop on board pretty quickly when they see how well it goes. And there are actually quite a few Regencies who have already expressed quite a bit of interest in this journey as well. So it's an exciting model, and I think having the right management structure is just yet another one of those foundational pieces.
Interesting. So I guess I mean, compared to the funds being mixed together, this will give more discipline to the income and expenses of the waste management system itself.
Yep.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So the next question. So I heard that you and your team have been working really hard to get the project to where it is. And so far, what has been the most satisfying thing about the project?
You go, Jason.
You know, honestly, it's the way the teams come together. And when I say the team, you know, it's everybody. It's all levels of government. It's the experts across the globe. It's the experts on the ground. It's the behavior change people. It's the design people. It's the collection experts. It's the financiers. The way that we've all come together and we've created this plan that everybody's rowing behind, and everybody's had a piece in making it better. And it's not stopping. Every week, almost every day, we sort of kick the tires on it. We refine. We make it more real. We make it better. But it's at a state right now that I feel like it's as actionable as it could be. It's as realistic as it could be, and it's just the biggest thing of its kind that's been launched. That's been launched in the world ever. And so, you know, you can feel the excitement generated in the air when you just say that. So just having a really fantastic plan that's turning the corner at implementation, and knowing that you're on the right track is just electrifying. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you. Toby?
Yeah, well, listen, I'm probably from the same sort of school of thought. For me, I've been involved in this program right from the start. So seeing it come to fruition is just super exciting. Seeing the buy-in from stakeholders has been incredible. But I think the thing for me that is that I'm most proud of is the absolute scale of this thing. And people don't understand. You know, we're going to 550,000 houses a week. Twice, you know. So actually, we're collecting 4 bins from them, aren't we? So we're doing 2 million collections a week. This is unheard of. This is a monster project, and you know, I can't think of a bigger waste system in the world, and you know, a single contract like this, because normally waste systems are run at a district level or you know, so they're smaller packages. You know, this is just enormous, but it had to be enormous because one of the biggest things that we recognized as an issue was when you're rolling out and you're scaling, you need to remove the opportunity to say no. My neighbor doesn't have a collection system. Why should I be paying? So the only way to get around that is to give everyone one. You all have to do it. and that means you can't back out and do a half job. You have to just do a full job. And there's 2.5 million people in this regency, so we have to do it to all of them. And so to me, that is the most satisfying piece. This is scaled, and this is scaled to a degree that people have never seen, and I just think it's amazing. And the fact that we're doing it in a in an emerging economy, in a hard, this would be hard to do in Sydney. This would be hard to do in Tokyo. This is incredibly difficult to do in Indonesia. So that's why I'm so proud. I'm so proud of where we've got to now, knowing all of the hurdles we've got. I've got a risk matrix sheet with 90 risks on it. Like, you never have a project with 90 risks, but they're all manageable. But it's just like, you need to recognize what these risks are. And there's just so many because of where we are. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Wow. Hats off to the success so far and then ambition. Wow. So what about on the flip side? So the biggest challenges so far, I guess you already mentioned some of the fee collection, but was that the biggest challenges for you, or maybe you have a different perspective between you two?
I mean, why don't I jump in and then Toby will say smarter things. But look, to me, the biggest challenge, frankly, is you can feel how much we want to get in there and get boots on the ground and get concrete going and that kind of thing. And so honestly, just the time frame will never be fast enough for people like me. Like, I want to get on the ground. I want to sort of get people service today, yesterday. And so the biggest challenge is you really have to dot your I's and cross your T's in this stuff. The politics are important. The governance structures are important. Checking the plans and checking them again before you launch is critical. So for me, the biggest challenge is just simply I'm ready to rip through and get it, and we can't. We can't for a good reason. So I think we all get it, and it's the right approach. But that's, to me, that's the biggest piece. Everything else, there in a project like this, Toby described the 90 risks. There's going to be things to solve for, and that's just part of doing this kind of a system in this kind of a spot. So we expected that. So yeah, I think my biggest challenge is, hey, I just want to crack on, which is kind of exciting. Toby?
We probably differ a little bit here, Jace. My biggest concern is government and community, and I just, that's what keeps me awake at night. How are we going to best get them to come along for the ride? And we're getting there. Where we have a very, very detailed engagement plan. It's been put together beautifully. It's been an iterative piece of work, and we've got to a point where we're really comfortable with what it is. But it's still got to happen, and so that's what keeps me awake. It's the government, they're saying all the right things, the community, they're saying all the right things, but until they actually do the right things, I won't be happy.
Great. So the next question is about the future. So what are some of the milestones that you are aiming to hit in the near future?
So we want to break ground in Q2. Right, so we want to start building in Q2. The design's underway now. We want to start procuring vehicles and conveyor systems and have some tangible assets on the ground. Once you have that, then you can start showing your community what's going on. Jason and I want to be collecting waste by the end of this year, and if there's two people that can do it, it's Jason and I. We will push to get this done, but we want to see some collection happening this year. We want to see it reach full speed. Speed by the end of 2025 would be the full speed. Everyone on board, everything's at full speed. And then before that though, we've already started designing the second one, and we're working in an office somewhere working on the rollout for Magalang at the same time, and then taking the learnings from here. So a lot of that's going to be dictated by funding, but that's where I would like to be. We've proven a model. Let's show it working, and then this is as scaled as it gets. If people say they want to finance the waste sector and they can't see this is the right one to finance, well, there's something horribly wrong with the system, because this is as scaled and as effective as it gets. You know, so the milestones at the end, we want to be diverting 50,000 tons a year from the environment, and try to recycle 30,000 or 35,000 of that. You know, there's big numbers, and this is, you know, they're huge numbers. Will we get there? I hope so, and we're going to push as hard as I can to get there. Will we get to 80% of it? Probably more likely, but it's not. It's about, you know, you've got to be driven to succeed it, and I think, you know, we've got the team in place to try and draw as much as we can out of this. You won't find much more passion in a delivery team. So I'm pretty confident that we can get there. So I think the milestones for us, that's as far as I've gone. So, you know, start building it soon, start collecting soon, start selling the recyclates to the market soon, and then off the back of that recyclate sale, let's generate some industry. Let's have some companies come and say, well, we can get 20,000 tons a year of X from you, or 10,000 or 5,000. I can set up a plant. I'll set up a plant. We'll go into a long-term contract. We'll start an industry. And then when there's an industry, waste systems become embedded. And when they're embedded, the problem goes away. You know, people just require the waste to be collected to manage their buildings and to manage their plants. So everyone then starts getting involved. And, you know, that's what I want to see.
Right.
Might be a little bit aspirational.
Great. Jason?
Toby kind of, we spent a lot of time together. He encapsulated all my hopes and dreams on that one as well. So I really don't have anything meaningful to add. I guess the only thing I would say is, look, you know, in addition to all of that, you know, other similar units of government looking at this program and emulating it, right? Taking on a life of its own, so that we're building, we're creating best practices, we're partnering and partnering and problem solving and really lighting the path, hand in hand with the Indonesian government. But then, you know, I'll feel like we've double succeeded when you look around and you see places where we're not working at all, who are picking up on these pieces and applying them in their areas. And that's in the end, that's sort of, you hit a tipping point, you reach full success for the entirety of the system. But all the pieces that Toby mentioned at the beginning are the stepping stones to get there, and each one of them is massive and exciting. So yeah, I've got nothing else to add.
Great, thank you. So we're almost there. Thank you for your time and patience. And there are two more questions regarding the Japanese businesses. So as we know, Japan is one of the biggest investors in Indonesia. And so how do you see the role of Japanese businesses in reducing plastic waste? Let's talk about Indonesia in this case.
Yeah. Oh, so this is definitely my spot, and you know, I would love to see investment in secondary processing. I would love to see, but I would love to see, you know, what we're doing here is it's happening, but it's not. It's sort of a cart before the horse scenario, where companies are saying, no, we'll set up and do stuff as soon as we know that we can get that feedstock from you. But selling the feedstock is difficult then, because we then have to wait 2 years for a plant to be built before we can sell the feedstock. So there's a cart before the horse thing there. I would love to see some early contracts. I would love to see a Japanese company come and talk to our end trader and say, yeah, I back this thing. I think this sounds like a good project. It's going to work. And we can come in with a, you know, I'm not asking for donations. What I'm asking for is someone to set up a commercial venture that we can feed, you know, and that's the sort of thing. I want to see people back the project with their own business. And you know, like you say, Japan is a huge investor into Indonesia, and you watch the market so closely. Waste has never been aggregated like this at this amounts in Indonesia at all. You know, so this is the first project of hopefully many So I think I would love to see Japanese companies do what they usually do and lead from the front when it comes from investment. You know, they're usually well and truly in place before people thought about it. And I would like to see that happen here. You know, there's a lot more conservative business-minded countries and areas that probably would wait longer. I would like to see some aggressive business practices from the Japanese businesses. That's what I would like to see.
Great, thank you. Very concrete. I think this will be very useful for the Japanese audience. Jason, anything to add?
Honestly, not a thing. Creating that big circular economy that Toby described in his kind of vision statement, if you will, is exactly what's needed to pull this material through and make sure that it's sustainable. So I think it's an opportunity for the right companies, and I think it'll also at the same time, help build the system. So couldn't have said it better.
So if after this webinar, if a Japanese company got really excited and interested in establishing a secondary processing facility, as you said, are they okay to contact you guys?
Of course. We've spent 2 years talking to people every week about this sort of stuff, and I love it. And I know Jace does as well. We tend to take people out and show them as well about what it is that we're doing. People can't grasp. It's very difficult to grasp the size and scale of this. And I would love people to understand it more. And so Jason and I often take people out on tours of either Project Stop or out in Malang to show them what's going to happen. And we would love to do that for the Japanese members as well. I think that would be something that would be would be fantastic. Once you've done that, everyone has an idea of scale, and we can then show how logistics would work from here to Surabaya. It's only an hour away. Here's a really good road. So, if you could, a lot of people, Indonesia, the biggest problem in Indonesia is logistics. If I set up a plant, how am I going to get stuff to it? Because it's, the road systems. Well, there's a very, very good road system. And it's one of the reasons why we chose Malang as well. There's a very good road system between Malang and Surabaya. And Surabaya is obviously the recycling hub of Indonesia, or definitely Java. So that made sense. So I think that we would love to talk to people. We also have an entity that is working with us and the project and Malang on trading. You've probably seen it in some of the documents called GPT. It might be worth speaking with them as well about feedstock and the availability of feedstock and how much we expect to get tonnage, and just start the conversation. What I would love to see is someone come in and say, we'll do a film, we can do polyolefin film recycling. That'd be amazing. Or someone comes and says, we've got a solution for multi-layered sachets, which is the bane of everyone's existence. So if someone in Japan can find me a solution for multi-layered sachets, which could be things like lumber or fake plastic timber, that sort of stuff, fantastic. Do it. But there's hardly any polyolefin film recyclers. I think there's one decent one. No one's doing polyethylene. They're only doing polypropylene. So there's plenty of options, and we'd love to talk to companies who are. You need to be a bit creative though. It's the whole thing. We're at that point where the project is starting. It's going to be the start of something big. Get in early and get a bit creative about what it is that you want to do. You're never going to get the quality of feedstock that you're going to get out of. This is the key. You're not going to get the quality of feedstock that you would get out of Europe or America or Australia, because everything's contaminated here, and we're sorting it over a manual conveyor system, and it's contaminated with food and dirt and stuff. But we can clean it. We can work on that. But and over time we'll get separation better. But at the moment, we're asking people to participate in a waste system they've never participated before, and then we're asking them to separate their waste into organic and inorganic. And in a lot of places, we have to call that man-made and God-made. So it's real basic. We're going back right to the start. We can't expect too much to start with. They're not going to separate like you do in Japan or like we do in Australia. So then you can't expect your feedstock to be as clean either. So these are the sorts of things people have got to recognize.
Right. Yes. I think this level of specificity is great. I can see a lot of questions coming in during our webinar next month. So thank you so much. So that concludes the list of questions that we have prepared. Is there anything that you want to add before we close the interview, Jason and Toby?
Jason? Nothing from me.
No, I'm just very appreciative of the interest. We think it's the greatest project going, and so if other people are interested as well, that just makes us all the happier. If anybody's interested, or particularly if anybody thinks they might have a worthwhile solution for sort of valorizing materials, we'd love to talk to you. And anyways, it's been a pleasure spending an evening with you.
Yeah, indeed it has. Yeah, it has indeed.
Thank you so much. I really learned so much from both of you, and the project is really exciting. And I can't wait to share this interview with the Japanese audience. Thank you so much.